We just saw you in Vegas. We just saw you at the Castle, and here you are back in Baltimore.
Yeah, I can't hold a job. That's what it is.
Well, I'm too old to hold a job. Oh, in fact, speaking about old, how long have you been magicking?
51 years.
51 years.
51 years.
And you started when you were 2 years old.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, I started when I was 10.
10?
And, yeah, I wasted about the first 3 to 4 years of my life in magic, looking through the catalogs. And I wanted to buy the tubes with the dragons and the boxes with the Chinese writing. I thought that's what it was all about.
So you had a lot of money to spend for stuff.
No, I didn't. I had a paper route, man.
You didn't take the oatmeal box and make your own.
Oh, I did. Oh, I did that. Yeah, I tried, you know. See, but I didn't learn how to do that until I started reading books.
Oh.
Yeah, you see.
See, it's a good. Something's good about being a literate magician.
Phil Thomas. You remember Phil Thomas?
I know of.
Yogi Magic Mart in Baltimore. It's a great shop.
Oh yes.
I used to go down there every Saturday. And he was the one. He'd always call everybody my dear boy. And I'd walk in there and he said, buy books, my dear boy, books. And I'm saying, I don't want any books. I want something cool looking. And one day, my parents bought me a backdrop frame for Christmas. They bought it from the shop. And I opened it Christmas morning, but it was warped and the things are like a lot of stuff you get from a magic shop. And the screws were coming out and stuff like that. So I called Phil, asked him to, could he take it back? And he said, well, I'll trade it in. And when I got up there, he had a used set of tar bells.
Ooh.
And he said, well, here, my dear boy, you can trade those for this used set of tar bell. And I didn't want them.
Books.
I said, all right, I'll take them. Changed my life. That's what magic's all about.
Remember Sherry Lewis's dad?
Abe Hurwitz.
Abe Hurwitz used to teach magic in the park in New York City.
In the park.
George Schindler was one of the students.
Howie Schwartzman, who taught me.
Doesn't Howie live around here someplace?
Howie still lives in Baltimore. And he was Vernon's student.
No kidding.
Yeah. See, they took Howie to, Vernon put Howie up in front of the Parent Assembly in the Society of American Magicians years ago as his student, because every year they have student-teacher night.
Okay.
And then years later, Howie came down to Baltimore to live in Baltimore because of his business. And he kind of took me under his wing because he liked what I was doing. And he nurtured me and taught me. And he took me, when I was like 15, up to New York City and put me in front of the Parent Assembly of the SAM. And I was standing on that stage, 15 years old. My hands are shaking. You know, I'm trying to hold billiard balls, and I'm going like this, trying to fit them in between my fingers. Scared to death, but it went real well. And here I'm doing split fan card productions, and who's in the audience? Frank Garcia. I'm doing billiard balls. Who's in the audience? Roy Benson. Milburn Christopher, everybody's
specialty was watching you do them.
And I'll never forget, after it was over, you know, it went real well, and they came backstage, you know, Howie being my teacher introduced me to everybody, and Roy Benson came back and congratulated me, and Howie said to Roy, he said, give the kid a few tips. He says, come here. And he took me off into this little room and sat me down, and went over billiard ball theory and how I got to eliminate doing this and change this, change that. And just gave me a whole personal lesson on billiard balls.
Amazing.
Man, what a night. What a night. When I was in Vietnam, every time, if you were in Vietnam and you offered to do another tour in Vietnam, they'd give you a free 30-day leave anywhere in the world. So I picked England.
Well, were you in the service?
Yeah, in the Army.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, in Vietnam, 3 tours.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It wasn't. You weren't on USO or something.
No, I was an Army soldier. Yeah, and later I got into the entertainment industry and went back.
Right.
But when I got this free 30-day leave after volunteering to go back for another tour, I picked England. So they flew me to England, and you know, I'm there, and I'm hanging out at Harry Stanley's Unique Magic Studios. And then I went, and Alan Allen was working there for Harry at the time as a demonstrator, and he said, Denny, you got to go down the street. He would whisper. If Harry heard him, he'd fire him. He said, you got to go down, you got to see Ken Brook. You got to see Ken Brook. So I went down to Ken Brook's place, and that's where I hung out and learned so much magic. Just for a month, I hung out there and learned so much from this man. And then Alan told me, he said, well, you know, it's holiday season. Why don't you get on the train and go up to Blackpool? Blackpool, what's Blackpool? He said, well, that's the seaside resort. And they have theaters up there. And so I went up, and in one day, I went to 3 different theaters. I saw Sylvan at one theater with his cards and doves and the huge rabbit. And I saw Johnny Hart at another theater. And I saw Tommy Cooper at another, all in one day. That was the day I'll never forget.
I'll bet.
I'll bet. Cannot forget that. Most of the USO shows stayed in the more secure areas.
Right,
And we were up in a very insecure area in the mountains, so we didn't get much USO, but we did get private entertainers. And that's where Johnny Aladdin came in. Johnny Aladdin, I probably learned more from Johnny Aladdin about performing for real people. He came into our tent. He did wonderful. He did card manipulations that were beautiful, and he worked a little differently. He grabbed the guy's helmet, and he held the cards up like this, so that everybody could, and he did them up here.
Oh, wow.
And he produced the cards, and he'd do them like this, you know. He did that. He did the serpent silk through the microphone and the untying, but he did it with a rope. And then he also did a comedy rope escape, you know, with the Keller rope tie in the back and the chains around his feet. And it was real funny because the music is playing, and he's got these two guys up, and they're down there chaining his feet while his hands are tied. And he would look down while they're chaining his feet, and he's stage cueing them.
Oh,
Which he learned all from John Calvert. He learned everything from Calvert. And so he's giving him stage clues. Now his hand would come out, and he'd smack one of them in the head, in the back of the head. His hand would go back. This guy would look up at him, and he'd go, no, no, I'm still tied. And so this guy would give this guy a dirty look. Next thing you know, he's hitting another one, hitting another, and then these two guys get to fighting. Finally, he pulls a cigarette, you know, he takes it out, and, you know, they're down there chaining, and he lights a cigarette. And he's blowing smoke in their faces, and you know, he's still tied. Then he's dropping ashes in their hair and stuff. Oh, it was great. But it's real funny, when I first got to know John Calvert, and John came up here to lecture the first time, we got to be real good friends, and I told him, if there were no John Calvert, there would never have been a Denny and Lee. And he said, why? It's because Calvert taught Aladdin, Aladdin taught me. And and that's what this magic's. That's how you learn. That's how you learn.
Right.
Here's the only man, I worked with him on a convention show in Florida. He he's got this big build-up with the tape to build up, and he's got the drums, and ladies and gentlemen, John Calvert. And he walks out, he walks into the audience, starts shaking hands with people, the music's playing, he's got women up, and he's dancing with them. It's 10 minutes, he hasn't done a trick, and everybody likes him. And you go, if any young guy wants to learn how to be a performer, that's the guy you watch.
That's right.
You say, it's not about the tricks he did, it's him.
How he handled the audience.
Walks into a room, and the room lights up. I saw so many great magicians.
I guess you saw Mark Wilson.
Oh,
and,
God,
all
yeah.
those people.
See, I know. See, you know how moms are about, well, what are you going to do, son, for a living? Well, I'm going to be a professional magician. Well, back in those days, there was no such thing. There was no David Copperfield. There was no Doug Henning.
Right.
There were no TV magic specials. There was only Mark Wilson, and that was on Saturday morning as a kids show. And my mom, yeah, my son, yeah, he's a magician, But she never felt I made it until one day I came back from the Magic Castle, and I told my mom, I said, yeah, I just had dinner with Mark Wilson. Now, my son, the magician, because you've had dinner with Mark Wilson, you're okay now. It's like we sit there and we talk. I used to talk with Billy McComb all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And we used to laugh because we're sitting around talking about charts. And the guys go, charts? What are that? I said, music.
The music
for when you
chart.
rehearse your orchestra for your act. What? They have no idea what that meant.
The only people who still do that are cruise magicians.
Cruise magicians still do.
Still have charts,
and that's what I admired about Harry Blackstone Jr. One of the many things I admired about him. He always took his orchestra with him.
Wow.
When he worked, it was a live orchestra.
Everybody ought to know that you're here,
we try and we try to get them to understand what learning magic is all about. And it's the books, it's the history. I've always had this feeling, and I can spot it. If I'm in Vegas or I'm in somewhere and I see a magician perform, I can watch him perform, and I can tell you whether he reads books or not.
Whether he studied or not.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And you know what it is? There's something that gets in your soul when you study magic. It's in your heart. And when you perform, it comes across the footlights and into everybody else's heart. And they love you. And if you don't have that background, and the great Rossini, Paul Rossini, one of the most successful magicians of all time, worked for high society, did nothing but classics, cups and balls, egg bag, linking rings, this, that, whatever, cards across, whatever. He has a great statement in his book, House of Cards. He says, I have learned more about performing professional magic by reading biographies of other magicians than by any book on magic tricks.
Yes, yes.
And,
there are a lot of secrets hidden in between the lines.
Secrets are in between. You got it, in between. Because what you do, you get into you feel their ups and their downs, and you feel what they're working on, why they struggle this way. I don't have the right closer. My opening's weak. So I decided to try this, and you feel all of this, and you live it with them.
Denny, this is fantastic. Is there any kind of a trick you can do for us? Is that asking too much for you to do a trick?
When I lit my cigarette, was that a cue?
Yeah, yes. I figured you were going to do cigarette manipulation.
Oh, might as well. One of my favorites here, you just give a little blow. Always comes back, you see. You just give a little, yeah.
John Calvert taught you well.
John Calvert, yes indeed.
Oh, God.
Yeah, but it looks better when you're doing it with Tammy. Tammy, greatest assistant in the world.
Oh my God, have you seen them perform? Right?
Oh,
have you seen them do the watch
That's
trick?
the one. That's the part.
Oh.
It's the most convincing thing in the world when she stumbles and drops that watch.
I know.
You swear, and she's so cute about it.
And she looks up and like, what am I going to do? And John looks there and says, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And
She
comes over
whispers
and
in his
whispers
ear.
to him. I've seen that same routine. I
man.
don't know how many times, and every time I got to die. It's so great. It's so great.
Wonderful, wonderful act.
Right.
People always tell me, "Why don't you write your book?" Well, no, you know, now I'm in the, since I'm sort of semi-retired from performing, I'm in a magic shop now, and I have a lot of customers. I can't possibly write an honest book about magic because it would just piss off most of my customers. So I can't do that. I'd lose too many of you.